Hello, gorgeous Pisces clan, and welcome to February 2020. We are edging our way into Pisces season in February, of course. And February is always a powerful month. And there's kind of a sense of relief and softness in February after eclipse season, after the beginning of this new year and all the really powerful revolutionary energy that was going on with our foundations and who we are, who we want to be, right? So that edgy, heavier energy that was so predominant in December and January is giving way in February to a lot softer energy. Now, Pisces, it's an interesting month for you because, of course, every year as we lead through Aquarius season and move into Pisces season, those weeks before your birthdays begin, before the energy starts to pour into Pisces, is a really deep time for your energy to check in, go into the hidden parts of yourself, go into those really psychic, softer parts of yourself. And the lead up to birthdays can often feel a little bit mellower, a little quieter, a little bit more about rest. And the other element that's coming in there with that process is that you got this Mercury retrograde going on. You all had a Mercury retrograde in your sign last year during your season. We have it happening again this year. And the way Mercury retrogrades go, he goes across your sign, and then he's going to go back over it, and then he's going to go forward through it one more time. So over the next 2 months, February and March, you're going to be noticing that Mercury is doing some work with you. Now, it's kind of nice when it's in your own sign, because you know how Mercury has that reputation for being in charge of all the technical issues and communicating with other people. When it's in your sign, it's just going to be much more about how you communicate with yourself, how you refine your vision and your voice within yourself, and not so much about how you're relating to the external world necessarily. Of course, it affects how you relate to the external world, how you visualize your messaging, how you talk to yourself, how you communicate to yourself. The way you speak to yourself is very important. So this Mercury retrograde, the pre-shadow starts right at February 1st. Mercury enters your sign on the 3rd, goes direct all the way up until the 17th, and then starts to retrograde back. And it will nudge into Aquarius a little bit in early March, which is in your 12th house, that hidden secretive part of yourself. And then it'll start moving forward again on March 10th. And then the post-shadow phase goes all the way till March 29th. So, like I said, the next 2 months, you're going to be noticing that the way you talk to yourself, the way you write stories about yourself, about your legacy, about who you are going to be coming up as big themes. This month is powerful too. Aquarius season, like I said, takes you to that deep 12th house place. And there's also some really powerful energies going on with that prep phase. The full moon in Leo is happening in your 6th house of how you show up day to day, how you take care of your body, how you are in the physical. Justice wanted to show up. All right. I like Justice. Justice is always such a clear card. It brings so much clarity, so much focus, that sword energy of being able to communicate, right? To use words in ways that are constructive and clear and crisp. And I like that idea of crispness. Mercury retrograde going through water signs means that we are often connecting with how we emotively move through the world. But the way we use words can help us connect to our emotive process in really effective ways. 8 of Swords. So clarity and then fog. That's about right, isn't it? So yeah, that full moon in Leo is going to be really powerful for you connecting to your physical form. Mars is going into Capricorn on the 16th, which is really powerful for the way you want to show up in your community and the people you have around you. And then, of course, Pisces season begins. We have a new moon in your sign, 9 of Cups, a lot of intention setting going on there. The new moon in everybody's sign, is whenever it's in a dominant energy in your chart, and sun sign, rising sign, moon sign, what have you, it's a really great time to check in with yourself, check in with, how you're speaking to yourself, especially this new moon. Hermit, that energy's been coming up really strong. in February, the Hermit energy. And we'll talk through, because the Hermit isn't, I think people think of somebody who, ooh, the Fool, who just sits at home, right? Oh, a hermit, you just sit at home. But a hermit is a seeker and seeks truth and knowledge, but not in like a cutesy way. You know, the hermit, yeah, he's not going out drinking, he's not going to the bars. He's seeking in ways that aren't always obvious to the outside observer. Death. and that seeking is profound and essential and often gives us the best information we can have. So Pisces, the two messages that were coming through when I think about all this energy working with you this month: Knight of Cups, love it. The one was the messaging you give to yourself, how you speak to yourself is going to keep coming up, where you cause pain in yourself by retelling stories over and over again, whether that's about yourself and your value and what you're allowed to do, and where you have those high standards and you really make it hard on yourself, or even where you retell stories about how somebody's done you wrong and how you need to hold on to that, and how, you know, you're not going to put up with that and they're doing this thing, even to how you tell stories about other people and what you think that they're supposed to be doing, right? There's a lot of ways we put pressure on ourselves, and then we put pressure on ourselves via putting pressure on other people in the stories we tell about them. And even though it seems like we are focusing on their problems, what we're really doing is we're re-emphasizing why we have a problem. So all of that's coming up, right? And we all do this. I'm not just picking on you guys. Everybody has struggles with this. Four of Swords. Okay. Well, you have some really dynamic and interesting energy this month in the cards, my Pisces friends. The other note I wanted to bring up with you for this time, because this month, despite the fact that we have some deeper energies and we have some really powerful energies, they're actually very clear. They're very simple. So don't make things more complicated than you feel you need to make them. You know, you don't have to add a lot of layers of explanation as to why you want something to shift, or layers of explanation as to why something is working for you. Sometimes, you know, the greatest wisdom often comes very crisp, really clear. It doesn't have all this convoluted storytelling, right? It comes in and it just says, yes, this is true. So that's going to be coming up as a theme for you this month. Now let's look through these cards, because there's the classic dualism of death and rebirth in this reading. And I think, Pisces, you all have a really deep connection to death. Being the last sign of the zodiac symbolically, you are about the ascension into the great big beyond, right? And you very tapped into that higher frequency. And the closeout of a cycle, and the release, and like not holding onto the rope so tight, right? There's that essential sense of freedom. And, you know, even the sign of the fish and the sign of Jesus and death and resurrection, the sign of the green man in pagan culture, the old overgrown green man who is sacrificed to the spring. All of these symbols are really deeply tied into the Piscean symbolism. And I'm not saying you all have to be that, but that energy is something you're working with. And so when I see these cards, what I see is that, right? Like, you inherently have kind of a death and rebirth energy to you. So utilizing this month as a way to connect into that process is really important for you. This month is a lot about checking all our little gauges and noticing where maybe something's a little empty, you know, refilling, so, you know, our washer fluids, and making sure we have enough oil to lubricate the system. All of that, that's the weird way to put it, but it's a system check-in. And here's the thing. There's something very clear coming in here for you this month. There's a very clear answer. Like I said, wisdom off from our higher selves, from higher consciousness, from inner being, however you want to put that, comes in very simply when it's speaking. It doesn't bandy about and come up with complex reasoning. It's just clear and simple, right? And there's an answer coming in here for you with justice. There's a clarity. Now, that clarity at first glance may be really uncomfortable for you. It may be something that's kind of staring you in the face, and you may feel even lost at sea once you've kind of connected with this truth, connected with this shift, connected with this information. I don't think the information's bad, but I think what it is sometimes we realize something has changed and we can't go back, and the reality of that, the hit of that, can kind of leave us a little bit disarmed, a little blinded. Now, many of you know I have a fondness for the Eight of Swords, because where it seems like this is where we're trapped and we're stuck, and our mind starts to just come up with all the stories we've ever had about who we are and our value and what's not going to be okay, and all of that stuff starts to bubble up. What's really happening here is we're hitting into the most uncomfortable part of something in order to release it. And so there's something about a situation, a way you're speaking to yourself, you're talking to yourself, a way that you're holding yourself captive that is getting outright challenged here. And, your inner wisdom is saying, it's time to just let this be. It's time to release yourself from this prison of overthinking, overanalyzing, holding on. And it's time to be free, because your legacy is really one of joy, right? Like, here's the thing. If you look at this evolution, you kind of want to tell a mini story with these 3 cards. It's some kind of truth, some kind of revelation comes in, some kind of knowledge, answer, communication comes in. Initially, you feel very lost and very trapped and very overwhelmed, and maybe even, I don't understand how to take this in. And then once you release the barricades to that emotional freedom, you have this ease that comes in, right? And I think this is a really natural process. I think this happens to all of us regularly, and it can range from small revelations that are happening just within our internal process to bigger things in our lives. But the wisdom here is that, in softening our stance and not being so rigid and holding on to what we think is protecting us or what we think we need to be retelling, we give ourselves the gift of really new, warm, embracing energy. Now, here's the thing. You've got some kind of revelation going on there. And it's also sparking the seeker energy in you at a pretty profound level. And I've talked about the unimaginable horizon a lot over the years. It's a phrase I kind of came up with when you think about like the ending of a cycle and you're needing to kind of train your focus on this big, bold future that you can't conceptualize of, but you got to stand there and just kind of like open yourself up to it. I feel that the next 2 cards, the Hermit and the Fool, really speak to that. They both seek truth, right? And they do it in very different ways, because the Hermit is like the grandparent energy. It's the ancestral ancient wisdom. And the Fool is very much, the 18-year-old going out into the world for the first time, right? So these two sides of the same coin are both seeking, and when you look at these figures, neither one of them is just sitting comfortably at home, right? That's the thing with the Hermit. Everybody's like, oh, that must mean you sit at home. It's like the Hermit is out there. Communing with the earth, communing with information, and taking his time to step boldly, right? But both of these energies are not just staying with what has been. They're re-examining their thoughts. They're re-examining they're not even overthinking that, though. They're just saying, I'm ready to go seek out something new. So for me, Pisces, the beginning of your season, the beginning of this kind of rebirth energy for you all, this regeneration energy that's happening in February and March, and with the Mercury retrograde, it's kickstarting a new journey, right? And this, I think often the kickstarts to a new journey don't always start with fire and thunder. They start with a rumbling and a knowing and a positioning of our focus, the way that these characters are focused, where it's an acknowledgement of that shift. And it can be pretty profound. It's kind of a tectonic shift for you. Now, here's the thing. It's so interesting. You're just at the beginning of it. You're getting a lot of direct downloads about what that's going to look like, what you need to shift. If you're in an environment where, you like to go for long, beautiful walks, and you're in an environment where you can't do that, look at that. If you're in an environment where you wake up every morning and you feel claustrophobic, look at that. And look at how you maybe are telling yourself you have to stay with it. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Any of those thoughts are getting deeply challenged during this time. And the thing is that there is a death and rebirth. I think it's so interesting how death and the Knight of Cups are like the same figure. Their horses are in the same gate. They both are carrying One is carrying a banner, one is carrying a chalice, but they're both facing the same way. They're both going across the landscape. They're both going towards something, right? They're like two sides of the same coin, just the way the Fool and the Hermit are. And here's where that duality is really powerful with you all. What may seem like you are getting pulled backwards, or where something's dying away or something's going away, what's actually happening is something is coming toward you. And I think that's one of those dissonances that happens with the way we experience the physical world and the way that energy works. It often has a hard time totally translating down to some of the ways we perceive in our intellectual mind. There is the end of something here, right? The death energy is very much about release. But as somebody was pointing out recently to me, death is in the middle of the journey. It's not at the end. It's the number 13 in a 21 card, 22 card major arcana arc. Right? So death is often, the climax of a story. It's a turning point. And the thing here, like I'm saying, is what seems as though it is the ending of something, it's the beginning of something, it's the infusion of something really big and bold. So anything that's falling away, anything that's becoming clear that it has to go during this month is immediately opening up space for what is best for you. And there is a space creation going on here. Now, your final card is the Four of Swords. I've nicknamed this card the nap card, because the whole thing with Four of Swords is it's a rest it's an oasis in the midst of a seeking journey. It's an oasis in the midst of a long, arduous process, or something where you're growing a lot. You're changing your frequency very fast. You're taking in a lot of information. You're learning at lightning speed. At times that can be overwhelming. The Four of Swords is the rest point, that you take it all in. And I think during the new moon in Pisces and during the last few days of February, and also the fact that Mercury is retrograde in your sign, that's a restful transit. I know we like to think about it, it's going to be so hard, it's going to be so hairy, and I'm going to feel cut off from everyone. Mercury retrograde is about rest. It's about resetting. We don't want to constantly be in that hyper energetic forward motion, constant communication mode, right? That's so unhealthy and so of the age that we have that expectation on ourselves, right? And so much of the energy here is talking to the deeper wisdom that has nothing to, mercurial energy, the way messages get transmitted through our quiet. And the thing that's happening here is, you are getting reset to this Fool and Hermit energy of the seeker, of the holy seeker. That isn't always understood by mainstream society at all. In fact, these two characters are derided by mainstream society because it doesn't work for power structures to have people speaking to their authenticity, right? You are getting reset to do that. But in order to do that, you've got to have rest. Now, the final thing I want to do in our reading today is I'm going to pull a word from this bowl. I wrote up a list of words that came up for me when I thought about February. And I wrote them up and made them into little pieces of paper, and I'm going to pull one for you and see what the final message wanting to come out for you is. And the word is exploration. Wow. I mean, with the Hermit and the Fool there, and Death as well, these are all explorers. And the Knight of Cups. These are all exploratory energies. Exploration, yes. I think that's so true. I think Pisces this month, when this word comes up for you, you're meant to be exploring why it is that certain things are still with you when they don't need to be. And we're not just talking, like I said, about practical things. We're talking about stories, especially. Why your mythology, why certain aspects of that mythology are still with you now. And they're sneaky. They like to masquerade as things that are logical and make sense and fit perfectly. But maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. You're meant to explore. Explore your internal landscape and explore what it is that you need to change, right? That full moon in Leo too is about your routine. It's about the way you show up in the world. And for example, for me, I know I'm connecting with this with you all, and this is an example. I need to really redo my morning schedule, my morning routine, because I've gotten into this weird habit where I feel like I have to answer emails right away in the morning, and I don't feel good about it. And there's this part of me that's like, oh yes, you must do that because you need to get things done on time. My inner dictator likes to come out and say that. But what's to say that it's not better for me to ease into my day by doing some other type of writing or meditating or going for a long walk or getting up a little bit earlier and just taking some quiet time with myself to watch the sunrise or whatever. You know, really questioning, why do I feel the need to put myself through that specific rigor? Because it doesn't have an inherent better state, right? So it's that type of questioning, it's that type of exploration, and it starts small and starts to build into huge revelation in your life, huge changes. And you're going to, like I said, because of these transits and the way things are working with you this month, it's going to be a little relentless in showing you what's not working and where your heart is crying out for adventure, for newness, and for freedom from any old prison of thought that may be coming up. So you've got some homework this month, but like I said, the call is coming from inside the house. This is a lot of internal stuff, and this is very much within your own mind. And so don't let yourself feel too isolated by that, because yes, this is all happening internally for the most part, and you may kind of feel like everybody else is like these muffled voices around you in their own worlds, and you don't get it. You don't understand yourself or what they're doing. Don't worry about that. The way the wisdom's coming through, it will make sense all in good time. But yes, this is a transformational time. Happy birthday to the February Pisces out there. I know a few of you, and I know that you have a very interesting, powerful way you move through the world. So happy birthday to you. I would love to see you over on my Patreon. I'm going to be doing new moon, full moon rituals over there, my weekly astrology, checking in with you in my personal journey as I'm traveling and also doing my inner work during this Mercury retrograde. Oh, and I'm also going to do a Mercury retrograde discussion over there as well. If you're needing some toolkits for how to work with this energy, that will be a great resource for you. That will be up very shortly. So you can go find me on Patreon. I'll leave the link below. You can also find me on Instagram at SarahVerba. And I have a handful of sessions left on my February calendar. So if you're looking to work one-on-one with me, you can maybe snatch one of those up. And if you don't get a February one, March, I will open up more sessions very shortly in March. So you can kind of keep an eye out on my calendar, snatch up one of those rare sessions that I have. I would love to see you over there. And of course, I'm wearing PinkLune's gorgeous jewelry, as always, every day. Go check out her Etsy shop. She's always making something new and beautiful, and one of my best friends. So thank you so much, my beautiful Pisces. I will see you in March for more Piscean magic. I love riding the waves of this watery knowledge with you, and appreciate you so much.